Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast, the unofficial Tesla energy community covering solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady. Today, let's talk about solar roof. Is it the wrong solution? Tesla loses their head of Tesla energy operations. And let's talk about our solar roof pricing and break down the economics of the residential Tesla energy system. Let's do it. So we generally kick it off with audience participation time. This is the portion of the pod for your questions, your comments, and your community input. You can participate in two ways. You can call 203-816-5150 and leave a message, or you can record your message, video, audio, either way. Email it to teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Now, this week we have exactly, let's count them, 0 calls. So, no calls or comments this week. We can get right to the news. Inverse reports on former Tesla executive Arch Rayo, now CEO of startup Span, asserting that focus on the Tesla solar roof is looking to solve the wrong problem. Arch Rayo says, quote, "I think the solar roof product is very aspirational. It's one that'll likely be a success over time, but there are a number of existing technologies that have problems that need to be addressed," end quote. So you can see this is a bit clickbaity on Inverse part, but let's see where Arch is driving to. Quote, "If you really want to go from roughly 2% penetration in US homes to like 20% of solar penetration, we're solving the wrong problem by trying to design glass roofs. The problem to solve is, how do you simplify installability and therefore reduce the cost?" End quote. Now, this is all we get from the preview of the interview, which is behind a paywall, but this gives me enough to see where they're going with the interview. Of course, Arch Rayo has a horse in this race. Span is his company that makes modern electrical panels. You can see here that they have made a smart panel that gives visibility and control over every circuit in the panel. I have a link to their site in the show notes, and now that I've seen data from our Tesla gateway, it'd be very helpful, to see where energy is being consumed more specifically from time to time. There are some energy usage spikes whose sources aren't obvious, and it'd be really helpful to understand what's using that energy and ultimately, see if that device needs to be in use. It'd also be a great way to prepare for device upgrades based on energy usage. So lots of advantages to having a smart panel like Span, but the trajectory of the interview is price reduction and scalability. Unfortunately, Arch Rayo is missing part of the point here. I mean, if we take, for example, the car industry, there have been plenty of inexpensive, super efficient cars that have checked those two boxes. First, they simplify the transition, read hybrid technology. And second, they reduce the cost, read cheap options. Now, the best examples in the car industry of checking these two boxes are the Toyota Prius and the Chevy Volt. If we look at the Chevy Volt first, you can see here that it's a strong hybrid, decent range, all electric range, and specifically for the time, all of that at a decent price. Now, sales numbers for this car never really hit significant volume. You can see if I pull up the Wikipedia page, I've got highlighted that for the product of for the lifetime of the product, I mean, GM was only able to sell about 177,000 units. Now let's compare this, to the Prius. So the Toyota Prius, I have here. It's a weak hybrid, so it's got less all-electric range, granted, but it's coming in at an even lower price. And this car has, seriously been a bona fide hit. And, Toyota has rolled this hybrid strategy out to their other vehicle programs for a really good reason. But if we look at lifetime sales, we see a really impressive, if I remember correctly, it's about 6 million. Yeah, here we go. 6.115 million units over the last 15 years. But recent data, which I've got pulled up here, this shows that number dropping significantly in recent years. I'm not knocking the car. It's been a great success, but let's keep perspective on the state of the market. As other hybrids and electrics come on the market, this offering isn't driving volume adoption, even though it's got easy entry and the low price. Let's dig even further to see what the top selling cars have been, both in 2012, which you see right here was peak Prius, and then the last full year I could find for global numbers by model, which was in 2019. So we can see here, this is back in 2012. You'll see a lot of cars, but you're starting to see more SUVs and more trucks. You know, specifically the Ford F-Series. You know, it's not the number one selling car in the world yet, but as we know, that's where it ends up going. And here, this is for 2019. And yeah, these are worldwide sales. And we'll see that overall sales are unlikely to be driven by just ease of use and price. You can see that for both of these years, 2012 and 2019, the Toyota Corolla is the top seller, but it's not the rule for the remainder of the top 10 vehicles. The rule is trucks and SUVs with a couple of budget sedans sprinkled in. So, you know, back to Arch Rayo and his argument that ease of installation and lower prices are going to drive adoption. There's absolutely an argument for simplifying the install and driving down the cost, but if we look at the wider market trend, specifically the drivers of these trends, we're looking at aspirational and lifestyle products. We're not looking at the easiest and the cheapest. Let's apply this directly to home energy. There are plenty that will go for cheap and easy. Let's not kid ourselves. But if we want to drive adoption, we need to appeal to the customer's aspiration and to their lifestyle. Does a purely price-led approach work for some? 100% it does. But there are other considerations that will drive wider mainstream adoption. Aesthetics, technology, novelty, integration, all of these add up to a value proposition that either inspires adoption or suppresses it. Right? Later in today's episode, we'll walk through the value proposition for me and the creative director wife. It's the whole value proposition that drove us to adopt solar. It wasn't price. Definitely not price. Let's do the next news article. So Electrek reports that RJ Johnson's left Tesla. He was there for a little more than a year. RJ is a West Point grad that joined NextEra after his service in the U.S. Army. NextEra is a utility in North America, and Tesla brought RJ in for his expertise in utility projects. RJ is now working at a startup in stealth mode, so we can't see what he's doing exactly, but he's hardly the first executive to leave Tesla to start his own company. What I would say is really interesting about that, about his departure specifically, is that the Tesla energy business has struggled to improve margins and scale production over the last year. Most notably, of course, is the struggle with the Tesla solar roof. If we pull up the Tesla financials, the Tesla investor deck, we can see in the financials portion that the Tesla energy division, not quite there, Tesla energy division here only made about $500 million, and it took a spend of almost $1 billion to make that money. So we're at negative margin. And this negative margin is really unlikely to be a result of the solar glass manufacturing itself. Oh, I just realized you guys can't see that investor deck. I spent that whole time pulling it up. But you can see here, for total energy generation and storage revenue is $500 million. Down here, it cost them $962 million to make that 494. So we're at a significant negative margin. Experts agree that it's not likely going to be the material cost that's driving down these margins. It's about the installation time and the labor that's hurting the rollout. So with our solar installation, we had 8 and sometimes more people on site for 2 weeks straight, where traditional roofing operations can complete the job with much fewer resources. My neighbor across the street had his roof removed and replaced in 3 days with only 2 people. I mean, this is squarely in the operational column, and it may explain why RJ had to move on. This report notes that he may have moved on much earlier, but they've only now been able to verify that. But certainly, without expert guidance through the launch of the solar glass roof and the ramp of the solar glass roof, the operational inefficiencies would have been a tremendous drain on the profitability of that product specifically and pulled down the rest of the division's numbers with it. So this has been a quick news segment this week. Let's take a break and get into the pricing and the value proposition of our solar roof project. All right, I want to pull up the Tesla app and show you some stuff that I've been looking at. We've been power on for about a week and a half, and my compulsion to look at the app has subsided quite a bit, but I got to say that I've learned a lot about our energy consumption patterns. It's frankly shocked me. So let me see if I can get this up. Let's see. There we go, full screen. Get it over here for you guys. So this is early on in our turn on period. You can see here on Friday, June 4th, we're only using about 32 kilowatts per day. And then we turn on the AC Saturday and we double our consumption. And then beyond that, we have the AC on all day. You can see the oscillations up and down where the compressor for the air conditioning is turning on and off. And then you see that tremendous tower right there in the middle where we're charging the car at almost 18 kilowatts of draw. I mean, it's good, right? We can charge our car quickly, but man, it draws a lot of power. So I didn't have a particularly good grasp on the amount of energy the car uses. And when we turned on the AC, our total usage went berserker, where we're using quite a bit more energy than we were producing, even on max days. So you can see here I can filter by how much solar we're using, or producing, sorry. So this was a max production day, and we were producing only 72 kilowatts, and our home was using 120. So we're covering 2/3 of our total usage. So no wonder our electricity bill was $1 bazillion a month over the summer. As I showed last episode, we can compare some of the days of generation with my brother-in-law's system. He's got traditional solar panels that went in about 3 years ago. I've got some screenshots of those here. You can see his generation today. Are we recording? No, this is back on the 8th. Oh yeah, on the 14th. This is today's on the 14th. He generated 23.5 kilowatt hours. And then, of course, we generated 26 kilowatt hours. It's pretty consistent that on low generation days, we're ahead of what they produce. And on high generation days, we're behind what they produce. Their house is really quite close to ours, so we generally get the same sun profile each day. And you can see that reflected in his interface. If we wait long enough, it'll cycle through the the solar production curve on their Solar Edge inverter. But I mean, the interface isn't nearly as good as the Tesla interface, so I don't have any control over when it shows that. So if we're patient enough, we'll get to see it. It just pulled up the same thing again. But anyway, I expect their system will outproduce our system by a wide margin over a year's time. But we'll keep a look at the stats. We'll see how they compare. But one thing I do want to do is I want to get him on the pod to talk about his system and answer some questions. He's super entertaining. It'll be a lot of fun having him on. So let's get to the good stuff, right? I want to pull up our pricing and contract details. I believe I have them here. The first thing that I want to show you is the layout. So we'll go insert on the layout. You can see, ultimately, you can see what we got and how much we ultimately paid for it. This layout shows what we purchased and where the active tiles are going. You can see that it's a 13.5 kilowatt system, and 3/4 of the roof are covered with active tiles. So quite a bit of our roof is producing, and looking at sun patterns, over the last few weeks, I really regret not putting tiles on this back portion because it gets a ton of sun, throughout the days. I mean, if it was good enough to put on this back panel, why wouldn't it have been good enough to put on this panel? Of course, we were right at the top of what we could outlay for cash, so it's just as well. But anyway, just very interesting how that works out. And here's the contract. Let's zoom in on this bit. You'll see that we paid a total out of pocket $59,399. And after install, we had to pay $57,949 after what we had prepaid for the system. Now, the roof's production time is expected to be about 25 years. So we'll base our calculations on a couple of assumptions. Number one, our production will decline 1% a year for the first 5 years, and then it will decline 0.5% every year for the following 20 years. And this is as stated verbatim, worst case scenario in the contract. So I expect we actually do a little bit better than that. And then the second assumption we'll make is that electricity rates will hold constant at 30 cents per kilowatt hour for the entire 25 years. That'll give us something nice and conservative to, compare our numbers on. So in this handy dandy spreadsheet, you can see here is our monthly usage. We can plot these functions based on kilowatt hours used at our house. I was getting shocked at the energy total we've used for the last 12 months. We've used more than 18 megawatt hours of electricity between May of 2020 and end of April 2021. And I mean, that's going to outpace the expected annual output of our system by about 40%. And I mean, that's every year. That's not just once. We're going to need a bigger array. We don't even have a second electric car yet. It'll be interesting to see how close we are to the contracted performance of the system. I really hope we overproduce, of course. But I wonder, what the efficiency of the replacement solar glass tiles might be like in 25 years, when it's time to upgrade. But back to the spreadsheet. Even though we produce at a deficit, we have a very nice surprise in the conservative calculations for a full system. You can see our purchase price in blue. You can see the conservative in green. The system will more than pay for itself. If we use aggressive numbers, those are the ones in red here at the top, it only takes 15 years to break even, and we'll have another 10 years at least of producing free energy before having to invest more money into the roof. Now, I ask you one thing. Does an asphalt roof pay for itself? Now, this doesn't even take into account the non-monetary benefits of the system. We're talking aesthetics, energy security, big deal. Cool factor, of course, a big deal. Environmental waste, try tearing off an asphalt roof. Longevity, lasts much longer. Just the glass on its own, we're not even talking about production. So this really is a stellar value, even though it's more expensive. And we can come back to some more numbers. If we look at roof only, we can see what it would have been if we hadn't gotten the Powerwalls. You'll see that the ROI is even better, bringing the payback period down to almost 10 years. Look at this. Taking the aggressive model, almost 10 years. Now, we're not down to standard solar panel pricing, so there is certainly room for improvement overall, but the value of the solar glass roof is absolutely tremendous. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't sure the financials would work out to even pay for the system over its lifetime. It is worth pointing out, however, and I'm sure you guys are thinking this, that the batteries are only warranted for 10 years, so you could say there's a bit of additional cost we need to account for here, but because we aren't able to time shift demand, we don't have variable rates where we're at, and we aren't able to sell the energy back as part of a demand response program, there's no payback on the Powerwalls yet. Hopefully that'll change. But that means they don't contribute to the payback of the system and therefore shouldn't be counted in the cost, right? They're solely for power backup in case of grid down and more generally for attempting to be as off-grid as possible. And yet, they are still paid for by the solar roof in about 5 years worth of production. Essentially free Powerwalls, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, we switched on our AC last week when the creative director wife first flipped on the thermostat. We got a nothing. And it was getting really humid. We'd been trying to sleep with the windows open. So I was getting a little panicked when the system wasn't responding. Now, there was this little voice way in the back of my head, remembering that I had to flip the switch on to the air conditioner at the old house. So I hope that that was the case. And it was. There's a nice big on-off switch way in the back corner of my roasting oven of an attic. And right next to that switch, this pair of cool guy sunglasses. Nice red accents on the sides right here. That would be a perfect match for, say, a Tesla uniform, right? That's right. One of my awesome Tesla electricians freaking booby-trapped my AC and left their supervillain calling card behind. We'll find those glasses home again, I promise. But the creative director and wife and I had a really friggin' huge laugh over that parting gift we received from the Tesla team. Overall, I got to say the experience has been a roller coaster. Now, like I told the creative director wife when I was asking her to marry me, I want a high amplitude life. I want the highs, I want the lows, and Tesla delivers a high amplitude experience. We get the highs of cutting edge tech, we get high energy team, we get the lows of spotty comms and rookie mistakes. It's great, and ultimately a great decision with unbelievable value, but things like this have got to make you laugh. Anyway, that's episode 8 of the Tesla Power Podcast, the unofficial Tesla energy community. I'm Aaron Brady. If Tesla is even doing the referral program anymore, who knows? You could use my code. It's in the description. If you're looking at any Tesla products, you can save a few bucks and get some free supercharging by going to ts.la/Aaron62310 when you order. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let's do it again next week.